Sunset over the city. A train rumbles across the bridge, carrying another load of exhausted workers home. Inside, it's the usual sardine can. Oh, Hyunmin is just one of many, gripping a handle and his briefcase just trying to stay upright. He looks like he's about to collapse. The dark circles under his eyes say it all. One thought is looping in his head. He's actually going to die from this. The PA system chimes in. They're approaching Uedo, and the doors are about to open on the left. People start shoving before the train even stops. Hyunmin gets caught in the middle of the scramble. He scowls at the rowdy kids pushing past him. No respect for the grind. His vision starts to blur. He's reaching his limit. Then he sees it. A miracle on line 9, an empty seat during rush hour. He doesn't hesitate. He claims his prize. He clutches his bag and closes his eyes. Finally, a moment of peace. Meet manager Oh Hyunmin, 33 years old and already running on empty. He's always been an overachiever, top of his class at SNU, passing the CPA exam before he even graduated. He was the youngest manager in the company's history. An executive spot was basically guaranteed. But that success came with a price. Every time a project hit a wall, the board meeting turned into a firing squad. The solution was always the same: dump the disaster on Hyunmin's desk. He was the guy who made the impossible happen, even if it was killing him. Back on the train, he lets out a long, weary sigh. He's a shell of a man. 3 straight months of overtime? No one can sustain that. His head lolls back. He's out before he can even think about his stop. Everything goes dark. A sudden chill snaps him awake. He looks up, but he isn't in a subway car anymore. He's staring at a vast, open sky. Panic starts to set in. He definitely didn't miss his stop. He missed his entire reality. He's sitting on a massive stone throne in the middle of a cavern, suit, tie, and all. Below him, a huge crowd is cheering. It's a literal standing ovation from a horde of monsters. They're small, green, and incredibly loud. They're hooting and hollering with pure joy. Some of them are actually crying as they scream. Talk about a warm welcome. Hyunmin rubs his eyes, desperate for this to be a vivid dream. He opens them again, but nothing's changed. The cave is still there, and so are the creatures. The celebration is getting intense. One of them is even spinning around on the floor. His jaw just drops. This is beyond any stress-induced hallucination. He puts his head in his hands. He's convinced he's either dead or has finally lost his mind. From his high vantage point, the scale of the crowd is clear. There are dozens of them down there. The noise is deafening. A collective roar of KIA shakes the room. One goblin gets right up in the frame, screaming its lungs out. Hyunmin is sweating now. This is way too real. Green skin, pointed ears, tusks. There's no mistaking what these are. Goblins, exactly like the ones from every game or anime he's ever seen. He tries to make sense of the madness, but it's not clicking. One of the little guys drops to his knees and calls him Lord. The whole tribe joins in, cheering that their Lord has finally arrived. Hyunmin stares down in total shock. They aren't just talking, they're speaking perfect, fluent Korean. Hyunmin is standing there in his expensive suit, wondering why a bunch of green guys are calling him Lord. One of the little green kids starts waddling toward him. It stops right at the foot of his stone throne. The kid's holding out this weird, glowing orange fruit. He's practically begging Hyunmin to take a bite. Hyunmin takes it, but he's definitely not sold on the idea yet. He's seen a lot of weird things as a manager, but never a fruit like this. It's even creepier up close. He can feel a pulse thumping under the skin. He looks back at the little goblin, totally lost. The whole crowd is watching him like he's about to perform a miracle. He realizes if he says no, he's going to break all their tiny green hearts. He stares at the orange blob in his hand. Compared to the triangle kimbap he usually eats for dinner, this is practically gourmet. He sighs. His life back home was already a nightmare, so what's the worst that could happen? He stops overthinking and just goes for it. He takes a massive bite, his eyes widening instantly. The crowd is holding its breath, waiting for a reaction. It's incredible, easily the best thing he's ever put in his mouth. The goblins go absolutely wild, screaming their heads off. He's still confused. It's just a snack. Why are they acting like he just saved the world? Then the room starts spinning. He hits the deck, his briefcase sliding across the floor. His head is pounding like he just pulled a 72-hour shift. Suddenly, a blue screen pops up right in front of his face. It's a full-on character sheet. It says he's the Lord of Red Rock Valley with a population of 47. He just stares. His traits are literally overtime and speech. Even in another world, he can't escape the office. He can't believe what he's seeing, a real-life hologram. The screen is ticking down. Something called a territory war is starting in 4 days. He scans the rest of the info. Red Rock Valley, population 47, those aren't great numbers. He mutters to himself, wondering what a territory war even is. He sits there on the cold stone floor, trying to process the fact that he's in a video game reality. A notification pings. The system is actually listening to him. It explains that a territory war is a total war, where you have to use everything you've got to survive. He nearly jumps out of his skin. The voice is coming from inside his head. The system identifies itself as Wiki. Great, he's got a talking encyclopedia. It offers to give him a history lesson, but Human tells it to get to the point. He asks the most obvious question, where the hell is he? The response is short and terrifying, the demon realm. He looks out at the jagged, endless mountains surrounding the cave. He can't wrap his head around it. Summoned to the demon realm, this has to be a joke. The silence of the cave settles in. He's just a regular guy in a business suit in the middle of a monster world. He tells the system to cut the mystery and give him a real briefing on how to stay alive. Wiki hits him with the classic, low-level restriction when he asks how to get home. Human is about to lose it. He's yelling at the thin air, demanding a way back to his world. The red system window just repeats the same frustrating message. He slumps back into the cold stone throne, completely drained. He stares into the void, his mind spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour. The reality of his situation is finally starting to sink in. He grabs his cheek and gives it a good, hard yank. The sharp sting confirms it. This isn't some weird fever dream. He lets out a breath he's been holding for a long time. He tries to get a grip on the situation, rubbing his eyes. He summarizes the deal. He has to lead these guys into a war. The system confirms his worst fears with a simple, "That is correct." He looks out at the army he's been given. They aren't exactly elite warriors. They look more like they need a hot meal and a nap. He eyes their skinny frames. They're all skin and bones. Up close, they look even more pathetic. He thinks it's insane. He'd probably have a better chance in a fight against them himself. He asks Wiki the $1,000,000 question, what happens if they lose? Wiki doesn't sugarcoat it. Losing means he's probably going to die. The system explains that in a territory war, the winner gets total control over the loser's lives. It even gives him the stats. 99.95% of losing lords end up dead. A dry, hollow laugh escapes his lips. He looks up at the dark cavern ceiling. Whether it's his old life or this one, he's always stuck in a mess. He remembers the office, the constant struggle of trying to do everything with zero budget. No manpower either. He was always the one running around doing everyone else's work. And of course, there was never enough time. Just endless nights spent staring at a glowing computer screen. The stress of tomorrow morning deadlines was a constant weight on his chest. He realizes this world isn't that different. It's just a different kind of corporate nightmare. He looks up from the throne, his eyes narrowing. He asks Wiki if winning and leveling up is the key to finally getting home. The system pings with a glimmer of hope, possible. It immediately follows up with a warning about how slim his chances are. Human tells the system to save its breath and stands up. He starts walking, his footsteps echoing through the cave. He's stuck in a bizarre world where he's supposedly going to die in 4 days. He doesn't have time to sit around and mope. He looks out over the valley, the weight of the war finally settling on his shoulders. The little goblin with the red scarf watches him, looking worried. The rest of the tribe stares at their new lord, unsure of what he's going to do. Hyunmin faces them all. He's still got 4 days to turn this around. He loosens his tie, slipping back into his manager mindset. He's Hyunmin, a man who knows how to get results. Hyunmin narrows his eyes, his resolve hardening. He has no intention of dying in a place like this. He looks at the gathered tribe and delivers the news. Everyone, he says, it's unfortunate. A stark truth from his old life flashes through his mind. Overtime creates miracles. He loosens his tie, his expression turning predatory and intense. Starting tonight, he announces, every single one of you is working overtime. He surveys the battlefield, a deep, fan-shaped canyon carved into the dark rock. He stands before the Red Rock Valley goblins, analyzing the terrain. The narrow entrance is a bottleneck that could work in their favor. His sharp, tired eyes scan every detail of the rocky environment. He puts the question to his new employees. How do we win in this kind of terrain? He asks, but the goblins only offer confused chirps and blank stares. The red wiki system window pings with a useless message about his low level. Hyunmin snaps back, telling it to keep quiet. He pinches the bridge of his nose, feeling the weight of the task ahead. He's going to have to teach these creatures from the absolute basics. He raises a hand, demanding silence and focus from the motley crew. All right, everyone pay attention. He positions himself at the mouth of the valley, arms outstretched. From now on, he declares, we must defend this narrow alley. He begins rolling up his sleeves, ready to transition from a manager to a foreman. He starts barking orders, singling out a small squad. You 10 over there. He points toward the sparse, sturdy trees clinging to the higher ledges. See those trees over there? Pick ones about my height and chop them down. The goblins look at him, then at the trees, their faces masks of pure bewilderment. Hyunmin's voice booms across the valley. What are you doing? If you think I'm talking to you, hurry up and run. The fear of his authority finally registers, and the 10 goblins scramble away as fast as their spindly legs can carry them. He watches them go, thinking they're just like raw recruits who need a firm hand to get moving. He turns to the next group, his finger already pointing. You 15 go up there. He directs them toward the jagged peaks overlooking the entrance. Pick up every rock you can find and pile them on top of that cliff. The goblins begin the arduous climb, digging their claws into the rock as they scale the vertical face. Finally, he addresses the remaining members of the tribe. The rest of you, come with me and dig a pit near the entrance. Move out. Without tools or equipment, the goblins are forced to use their bare hands, tearing at the hard, packed earth of the valley floor. Hyunmin is out here digging into the dirt with his bare hands. He's determined to make things work with whatever limited resources he can find. Above the valley, 2 crescent moons glow in the night sky. He's already got some heavy-duty boulders lined up along the cliff edge, ready to be used as a trap. Inside the cavern, a pile of sharpened wooden stakes is leaning against the wall, ready for duty. They've even managed to dig out a deep trench in the middle of the path for extra defense. The manager stands before the tribe and gives them some rare praise. The goblins let out a collective cheer in response. But honestly, they're a total mess, completely covered in grime and dust from all the manual labor. Right then, a system window pops up. The overtime trait has been activated, giving the tribe a boost in efficiency while keeping their hunger and exhaustion in check. Hyunmin looks a bit relieved, but he knows they don't have a second to waste. He tells everyone to take a quick breather and pay attention to what's coming next. He looks out over his ragged group of subjects. The prep work during the day was just the warm-up. The real grind starts now. Hyunmin looks them dead in the eye and asks if they truly understand the essence of working overtime. The Red Rock Valley goblins just stare back at him, looking pretty confused. Under the twin moons, he explains that while it's going to be brutal, every drop of sweat they shed tonight means one less drop of blood spilled in the war. He hoists a spear into the air and demands a battle cry that'll echo through the valley. A few goblins lead the charge, shouting back with everything they've got. Soon the whole crowd is pumping their fists and chanting overtime like it's their new favorite word. They've fully committed to the hustle. Hyunmin barks out the next order. It's time to grab their weapons and get into formation. The tribe scrambles into motion, their bare feet thumping against the stone floor. It's instant chaos. Goblins are stumbling over each other and running in every direction. The Lord watches the mess unfold and can't help but sigh. This is a disaster. He looks at their gear, a blunt rock and a rusty dagger. It's clear they aren't winning this with raw power. He decides to take a more strategic approach, figuring that since their equipment is probably just as bad as the enemy's, tactics will be the deciding factor. In his head, he envisions the battlefield like a game where positioning is everything. He recalls a corporate chairman who always preached that the answer to any problem could be found in the art of war. He remembers reading about ancient military formations that were basically a blueprint for running a successful business. The plan is simple, a dense infantry formation where everyone stands shoulder to shoulder and thrusts forward together. Hyunmin tries to get them started by ordering the tribe to just line up in a single file. Naturally, they have no idea what that means and just keep bumping into each other. He steps in and grabs a small goblin by the shoulders, setting him as the guide for the rest. Then he picks up another goblin and shoves him into place right next to the first one. He keeps going, manually building his wall of soldiers one by one. He tells them to keep the spacing tight. If they can feel the elbow of the guy next to them, they're in the right spot. He picks up a spear himself to demonstrate, showing them the proper way to hold it with both hands pointed forward. The goblins try to copy his stance, leveling their stakes as he explains when to advance and when to thrust. The manager bellows out the command to advance. Immediately, one goblin trips over his own feet and faceplants onto the ground. The poor guy just lies there, completely wiped out. Hyunmin's shoe appears right in front of his face as he tells the guy to get back up. He isn't letting anyone slack off. He orders them to reset the line. They scramble back into their shaky formation as he roars the command to advance once again. Hyunmin looks out over his troops with a cold, professional gaze. If there's one thing he's learned from the corporate grind, it's that perfection takes practice, so he orders them to go again. As the goblins stumble and trip over their own feet, he thinks about how repetition beats talent every single time. He roars at them to advance. The training goes deep into the night under the glow of the twin moons, with Hyunmin's voice echoing across the valley as he demands more. He can see the toll it's taking. Their faces are starting to change, and not in a good way. Their hands are trembling as they grip their crude spears, and their shoulders are slumped with pure exhaustion. Looking at one goblin's face, Hyunmin realizes he's seen that exact expression before. It's the same look a new recruit has when their third report in a row gets rejected, the look of someone who's completely lost hope. But he can't afford to let them quit. He tells them they have to keep moving if they want to survive, and orders them to start over yet again. The moons hang high in the sky as his voice continues to ring out across the cliffs. The Red Rock Valley goblins are literally using their spears as crutches just to stay upright. One of them stumbles and nearly falls flat on his face. Hyunmin isn't showing any mercy, shouting at them to get up and asking if they think this is just a game. He tells them that from now on, every single mistake is going to cost them 10 extra reps. Suddenly, a small voice calls out to him, calling him my lord. He turns to see the small goblin, red scarf and all, walking tentatively toward him. Hyunmin looks down at the kid and asks what he wants. The little guy hesitates, looking down at the ground. He quietly suggests that they should just send the young ones away as food instead of fighting. Hyunmin's eyes widen in absolute disbelief. The child continues, explaining that this is how they've always survived, by sacrificing a few children so the rest don't have to fight. A group of even smaller goblin children are huddled together behind the adults, looking terrified. The small goblin reaches out and gently takes hold of Hyunmin's finger. He looks up with a sad smile and tells the Lord that if they do this, he can live too. The kid seems almost relieved to offer himself up. The rest of the tribe just stands there in silence, their heads hanging in shame. A dark shadow falls over Hyunmin's face as a wave of cold fury washes over him. He grits his teeth so hard it sounds like stone grinding on stone. He turns to the whole tribe and asks them if they're actually happy surviving like this. by feeding their own children to the enemy. The goblins don't say a word, too ashamed to even look him in the eye. He tells them that once you start giving things up one by one, you'll eventually find yourself with nothing left. His voice swells into a roar as he declares that they're going to fight with every single thing they've got. He screams that they won't give up an inch of their land or a single one of their children. With his eyes blazing, he vows that they won't even surrender a single grain of sand, and that the days of letting others take from them are over. The speech works. The tribe erupts into a wild cheer, their fear replaced by a desperate, unified resolve. Suddenly, the system windows pop up again. The countdown to the territory war is hitting the final seconds. A bright red notification flashes. The territory war has begun. High-pitched screeches echo through the canyon. A small puddle sits undisturbed on the ground for just a second. A heavy bare foot splashes right into it, sending water flying. The Black Hill goblins charge out of the darkness, their yellow eyes glowing with a hunger for slaughter. O'Hunman stands his ground at the end of the pass, his small but disciplined phalanx of goblins ready and waiting. He takes a deep breath, looking calm and lethal. He watches the incoming horde as they flood into the narrow tunnel. O'Hunman stands ready behind his line of Red Rock Valley goblins, who are holding their crude spears in a defensive wall. He's certain that they've done everything they possibly can to prepare. The Black Hill goblins roar as they charge forward, their yellow eyes glowing with a feral hunger as they rush the narrow pass. Watching the enemy swarm toward him, O'Hunman's face twists into a defiant smirk as he dares them to come and get it. A massive, hidden trench stretches across the canyon floor, with goblins standing ready along the edges with heavy boulders. O'Hunman stands behind his small line of spearmen, as the sounds of the approaching horde echo through the tunnel. The Black Hill horde finally bursts into view, their eyes glowing with a mindless bloodlust. His own goblins are clearly terrified, looking back at their leader for some kind of reassurance. He yells at them to hold steady. The trap only works if they wait until the enemy tries to cross. The charging enemies reach the very edge of the pit at full speed. Hunman just watches, waiting for that perfect moment when their momentum becomes a death sentence. The lead goblins finally see the drop and try to dig their heels in. It's useless. The drop is massive and right in front of them. They scream for the guys in the back to stop pushing, but no one's listening in the heat of a charge. The sheer weight of the ranks behind them shoves the front line right into the void. Goblins tumble into the darkness, piling up in a heap of broken limbs at the bottom. Watching the mess, Hunman realizes these monsters are just as incompetent as the people in his old world. With a cold glint in his eye, he realizes today's victory is already in the bag. At the bottom of the trench, the survivors are struggling to even stand under the weight of their comrades. He looks down at them with a ruthless smile, telling them to struggle all they want. The trapped invaders scream in pain and confusion as more bodies continue to fall on top of them. One goblin gets pinned down, unable to escape the growing mountain of flesh. The Black Hill horde continues to rush forward blindly, sprinting straight into the abyss. Hunman knows that once half of them are in the pit, there's no way for the rest to retreat. The pit is now a writhing mass of green skin and tusks. His expression turns chilling as he vows to make them regret ever setting foot here. He signals to the team stationed up on the cliffs. Now, he screams, kicking off the next phase of his plan. High above, the Red Rock goblins start dropping the massive boulders they spent all night gathering. Heavy rocks plummet through the air toward the helpless targets trapped below. A boulder connects with a skull with a sickening crack, ending any hope of a fight. The rocks keep coming, raining down in a steady, lethal rhythm. It's a total massacre. The heavy stones crush through bone and crude armor alike. One survivor can only stare up in horror as another massive shadow looms over him. The goblins in the back still don't get it, pushing forward only to stumble over more bodies. Chaos takes over the pit as every enemy tries to find a spot that isn't about to be hit. Another direct hit finds its mark, ending another struggle instantly. Hunman observes the carnage, nodding their nothing but sitting targets now. The few left alive are broken and barely conscious among the rubble. Some stubborn survivors still try to scramble over the pile to reach the other side. Hyunmin smiles, knowing that at this point, their superior numbers mean absolutely nothing. He steps forward and tells his tribe to grab their spears for the final cleanup. With a roar, he orders his disciplined line to advance. The spearmen thrust downward, methodically picking off anyone still moving. They work like a machine, eliminating every threat left at the bottom of the trench. A spear comes back coated in blood, as the last of the resistance in the pit finally fades. Oh Hyunmin shouts at his tribe to stay focused, ordering them to pull back and thrust in a steady, lethal rhythm. The spearmen execute his commands perfectly, their strikes systematic and relentless. Hyunmin continues to bark orders, telling them to hold their formation and keep up the pressure. With the enemy trapped and reeling, he gives the signal for his small unit to advance. A spear finds its mark, piercing through an enemy as the red rock goblins drive forward. The momentum has completely shifted, with the invaders now the ones fleeing in terror. The survivors of the Black Hill territory stumble backward, their earlier aggression replaced by pure panic. They reach the edge of the pit, their heels skidding on the loose rock. In their haste to escape the spears, they forget the drop right behind them. They tumble into the darkness, screams echoing up from the depths of the trench. Looking down at the carnage, Hyunmin watches as the last of the charging horde is funneled into his trap. Everything is going exactly according to plan, and a cold, satisfied smile plays on his lips. He notes that the tide has finally turned, with the enemy being bombarded from above and driven back from the front. He tells his tribe that their hard work throughout the night has fundamentally changed the battlefield. Just as victory seems certain, a sudden heavy thud shakes the ground, catching Hyunmin off guard. A massive shadow looms over the canyon floor as a giant, red-skinned figure lands with a bone-shattering force. The impact sends nearby goblins flying, the sheer power of the arrival clear to everyone present. A massive, clawed foot crushes the stone, marking the arrival of a truly dangerous opponent. The red rock goblins freeze in terror as they look up at the towering figure with wild, orange hair. Steam rises from the massive creature's chest, his breath heavy and hot in the cool canyon air. The hobgoblin lord of the Black Hill let out a deafening roar, his orange eyes glowing with an intense fury. Standing atop the pile of bodies, he raises a massive bone club, challenging the entire valley. He crouches low, ready to spring at the first thing that moves. With a sudden burst of speed, the hobgoblin leaps into the air, a terrifying force of muscle and rage. He lands right in front of the human in the suit, the impact cracking the canyon floor. The red rock goblins cower behind their leader, who remains remarkably calm despite the monster towering over him. The hobgoblin sneers, mocking Hyunmin for being such an unimpressive and weak-looking lord. Hyunmin doesn't flinch, dryly retorting that he recognized the monster immediately, mostly by his awful breath. He observes that this lord definitely looks different from the other goblins, carrying a far more dangerous aura. The hobgoblin roars for him to shut up, his temper flaring at the human's lack of respect. He demands that they forget the small fry and settle the battle with a sacred one-on-one duel between lords. Hyunmin blinks, clearly caught off guard by the request for an honorable fight in the middle of a slaughter. He glances to the side, his mind already working on how to exploit this sudden turn of events. He asks for clarification, sounding more annoyed than intimidated by the idea of a duel. The hobgoblin sneers again, asking if the human is simply too scared to fight like a real warrior. Hyunmin looks around at his trembling subjects, nodding that his own presence is the only thing keeping them from running. The monster lord swings his bone club with a violent force, calling Hyunmin a pathetic coward in front of his tribe. He laughs, relishing the sight of what he believes is a trembling victim. The hobgoblin sighs, wondering if he was expecting too much from a weak-looking creature in a strange suit. He decides to finish this quickly, promising to end Hyunmin's life before he can even beg for mercy. Just as the hobgoblin prepares to strike, a sudden, massive boulder drops from the cliff directly onto his head. The monster lord barely has time to scream about the interrupted, sacred duel before he's driven into the ground. The Hobgoblin Lord looks up in shock as a rain of heavy stones begins to fall from the cliffs above. He barely has time to let out a grunt of pain before he is completely buried under the relentless barrage of rocks. The once mighty lord is crushed, his body pinned and broken beneath the rubble as the dust settles. O'Hunman stands calmly with his spear-wielding goblins, coldly stating that winning is the only thing that truly matters. He looks up at the cliffs where more of his tribe are perched, nodding that the battle was already won, so a duel was unnecessary. A status window appears in the air, officially declaring that he has won the territory battle. A smirk of satisfaction crosses Hunman's face as he realizes his plan worked perfectly. He raises his spear and shouts to his tribe, congratulating them on their hard-earned victory. One of the red rock goblins sits on the ground, exhausted but relieved that the nightmare is finally over. The entire tribe erupts into cheers, their voices echoing through the canyon as they celebrate their triumph. A bloodied hand twitches in the dirt, belonging to one of the few surviving Black Hill goblins. The survivor groans, struggling to crawl away from the site of the massacre. He looks up in terror as a spear tip is leveled at his face, the victors closing in for the kill. The red rock goblins growl that there's still one alive and move in to finish the job. Hunman steps forward, his eyes sharp as he watches his followers prepare for the final execution. He suddenly speaks up, his voice calm but commanding, telling them to wait. The goblins pause, looking confused as they turn to their leader for an explanation. They ask him why he's stopping them, their eyes wide with surprise at the sudden order. Hunman asks them if they are really going to kill the survivor, his expression unreadable. One of his tribesmen argues that if they spare him, he'll just come back to attack and bully them again. Hunman firmly says no, taking a step toward the cowering enemy. He gestures toward the survivor, stating that if they kill him, he's just a useless corpse. He looks down at the terrified goblin, concluding with cold logic, spare him and he becomes a valuable resource. Red Rock Valley is quiet for once, but the morning after a victory is usually when the real problems start. O'Hunman surveys his new domain, seeing a lot of hungry mouths and very little to feed them with. He pulls up the wiki status windows to get a professional look at the current state of his company. The victory bumped the territory up to level 2, and with all the new prisoners, the population has ballooned to 260. They managed to scavenge some meat and leather, but it's these orange fruits that interest him the most. He also unlocked a new trait, close formation infantry, which should give his mob a bit more discipline and defense. A higher territory level means expanded information privileges, though the news isn't exactly great. Being located on the 12th underground floor of the Demon Realm makes finding sustainable food a nightmare. He steps down from his high perch, already calculating the burn rate of their current supplies. If he doesn't find a solution fast, he's going to be leading a tribe of skeletons instead of soldiers. He considers standard agriculture, but the system quickly informs him that farming is impossible on this floor. He pauses, his gaze falling back onto the orange fruit they recovered. He picks one up, wondering where exactly these things grow if farming is off the table. He turns to the captives from the Black Hill and demands to know where they found this fruit. The prisoner starts shaking, terrified by the cold gaze of the man in the suit. Hunman offers a deal. Tell the truth, and he'll scratch them off the torture list he totally has. They crack immediately, shouting about a forest of big trees they raided in the middle of the night. It's too much yelling for him, and he tells the panicking goblins to keep it down. Having found his lead, he looks out over his own tribe to pick a scouting party. He points to 3 specific goblins and orders them to step forward. They snap to attention, shouting their loyalty to their new lord. He gives them a simple mission: find that forest and scout it out before the sun comes up. Hearing the destination, the prisoners start murmuring in absolute terror. Hunman notices the reaction and asks what they're so scared of. One of the captives stammers that there's something guarding that forest. Apparently, anyone who runs into this guardian never makes it back to tell the story. Hunman just takes a big bite out of the orange fruit. Guardian or not, they still need to check it out. The nervous prisoner tentatively asks if he's really off the hook for the torture now. His own tribe isn't as merciful, shouting that the prisoners were bullies and deserved to be killed. Hunman turns back to face his rowdy subordinates. He asks them a blunt question: why do they think they actually won the last battle? They throw out the usual answers: their own bravery, his strategy, the usual ego stroking. He tells them they just got lucky, and relying on luck is a fast way to end up dead in the next fight. He admits the torture talk was just a bluff to get info. He has way more important things to do than hold a grudge. For him, survival is about thorough preparation, and he tells them to get back to work. Deep in the spider woods, the air is thick, and the light barely reaches the forest floor. The three scouts creep through the dark, spears held tight as they watch every shadow. A giant fly lands right on one of their feet, but they don't dare make a sound. One of them nearly lets out a yelp as they trip, but his comrade is quick to shut him up. He reminds him of the Lord's strict orders to remain silent and invisible. Back at base, Human had been very clear. Look, don't touch, and get back in one piece. The scouts continue their slow crawl through the brush, unaware of the eyes watching them from above. Just as they quietly reached their destination, the second scout abruptly gestured for the others to stop, as if he had spotted something unusual. He quickly pointed up at the dark, gloomy canopy, instantly catching the rest of the team's attention. They found the orange fruits they were looking for, but something seemed off beneath the canopy. The remaining scouts are frozen, staring into the dark as the realization of what they've walked into hits them. The fruits aren't just growing there. They're bait, trapped in a network of silk that looks like a massive graveyard. A scout tries to keep his comrade quiet, but the panic is already bubbling over. This isn't just a forest. It's a giant spider's larder, with every tree cocooned in thousands of layers of silk. Terror finally breaks through their discipline, as they realize they're being hunted. Every rustle of a leaf sounds like a predator closing in for the kill. They look down and see strange, deep punctures in the mud, like the footprints of something with too many legs. One goblin reaches down to inspect a dark patch on the forest floor, thinking it's just mud. It's not mud. It's a black, viscous glue that clings to his skin like a parasite. He realizes how dangerous this is. The more he moves, the more it sticks. Seeing the trap they're in, the lead scout shouts for everyone to turn back and run for their lives. They scramble away as fast as they can, forgetting all about the fruits they came for. But the guardian of the forest isn't about to let its meal walk away that easily. A thread drops from the sky, snagging a scout mid-stride and yanking him backward. He doesn't even have time to scream before he's pulled high into the branches, gone in an instant. Blood from the companion starts dripping down from the canopy. He reaches up to wipe away the liquid, still completely failing to process the deadly danger right above him. He looks down at the blood on his hands, a chilling reminder of how close he is to becoming the next trophy. He stops for a second, breathless and alone, looking around for any sign of his comrades. There's nothing but the sound of the wind through the silk-wrapped trees. Panic finally takes over, and he bolts out of the woods, screaming for everyone to run. Back at the Red Rock Valley, Hyunmin is busy trying to map out the territory with what little info he has. He points toward the horizon, asking if there's a desert further down the line. The local goblins look at him like he's speaking a different language. He tries to clarify, asking about lands made entirely of sand, but the language barrier is a constant headache. He rubs his temples, frustrated by how long it's taking just to get basic geography down. He's managed to piece together a rough map. They're here with a forest, a river, and a desert nearby. It's not a perfect map, but it's enough for him to start planning their next expansion. His planning is cut short by the sound of the scouts returning, screaming for their lord in total hysterics. Hyunmin stands up as they stumble into the camp, looking like they've just escaped hell. He immediately notices one of them is missing and demands to know what happened to the third guy. The survivors can barely speak, rambling about their friend being snatched up into the trees. Hyunmin's face hardens. He specifically told them to just look and not touch anything. As one goblin trembles, the Lord notices a thin, glinting thread stuck to the survivor's shoulder. He picks it up, examining the strange, resilient fiber between his fingers. He looks out over his terrified subjects, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. The manager's mind is already shifting from exploration to threat assessment. He visualizes the scene. The nets, the puncture marks in the ground, a perfectly designed trap. He tests the silk, noting that it's both sticky and incredibly tough, a problem he'll need a special tool to solve. He stares at the terrifying reality. These are spiders, the apex predators of this layer. They are threateningly large, and a dense forest provides them with a massive home field advantage where his tribe could be wiped out in an instant. In the worst-case scenario, they wouldn't even secure a single scrap of food and would lose every goblin they have. Hyunmin swallows hard, the weight of his responsibility as Lord pressing down on his shoulders. When have I ever chosen the easy path? He mutters, ripping off his suit jacket with a burning determination. He turns to his huddled subjects and gives the command, "Everyone, pack your things." With a sharp motion, he slaps his shoulder, his eyes burning with a strategic fire. "We're going to the forest." The forest looms in the distance, a dark and silent graveyard wrapped in thick, ghostly webbing. In the shadows, the unseen guardians strike with surgical precision, their barbs sinking deep into any intruders. The spiders don't just kill. They claim, their multi-eyed faces looming over their paralyzed victims. With a practiced motion, they wrap their prey in inescapable layers of silk, preparing them for the larder. Hyunmin leads the expedition into the heart of the woods, his presence the only thing keeping the goblins from fleeing. The tribe is visibly shaken, their small frames shivering as they look into the impenetrable shadows. Standing tall and composed, Hyunmin crosses his arms, carefully scanning the canopy for any movement. He taps his foot impatiently against the soft earth. They've made it to the edge, but progress is dangerously slow. He stares into the silent woods, frustrated that the spiders haven't shown themselves. He needs to know what they're up against before charging in blind. One of the goblins gnaws on a dry scrap of hide, his hunger making him desperate. Another goblin snatches it away with a snarl, the tension within the tribe reaching a breaking point. Hyunmin watches them, knowing that rationing is only a temporary solution. They need a real victory soon. Damn it, if I could just do something about these damn spiderwebs. He tries to pull a strand of silk apart with all his strength. He even tries his teeth, but the silk is impossibly tough and sticky, refusing to yield. While engrossed with the spider silk, he notices the little goblin sneaking off somewhere, and immediately calls out to ask what the brat thinks he's doing, making the little goblin jump in fright. The little goblin shivered, but he simply offered a simple warning not to wander off alone. No acting alone, get back in there, he orders, his voice stern as he tries to maintain order. Suddenly, the sky above cracks open with a violent flash of lightning, illuminating the dark forest. Thunder rumbles through the valley, and Hyunmin looks up, surprised by the sudden change in weather. Heavy droplets begin to fall, splashing into the puddles forming at their feet. Hyunmin wipes the rain from his face, looking up at the gray sky in disbelief. Everyone into the cave, he shouts, directing his shivering tribe toward a nearby shelter. He stands at the entrance, watching the downpour. This is the worst. I can't believe it rains in the demon realm too. He stares out at the rain, his mind already calculating how this weather will affect their plans. Wait, he pauses, something about the rain-soaked world catching his sharp eye. He reaches out, catching a strand of the spider silk he'd been carrying and letting the rain drench it. He watches intently as the water hits the fiber, testing its properties under the new conditions. As expected, no good, he mutters, though his eyes narrow as if he's found a hidden flaw. He walks back into the dry cave, running a hand through his damp hair. Everyone's inside, right? We wait here until the rain stops, he commands, settling in to wait out the storm. The goblins huddle together, their murmurs lost in the steady roar of the rain outside. One of the scouts approaches him, his face pale and his voice trembling with fear. My lord. The scout's eyes are wide with panic as he blurts out the terrible news. One of us is missing. Hyunmin's heart sinks. What, did you check properly? He demands, his voice sharp with sudden alarm. He quickly begins a headcount of the huddled group. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which one disappeared? The goblins look at him with wide, fearful eyes. Ku! They whimper, their small voices trembling in the dark. Hyunmin realizes with a start that the number is indeed wrong. No way, Hyunmin gasps, his gaze darting to the empty space where the red-scarfed goblin should be. That little runt really went off alone. Is that brat trying to get himself killed? Hyunmin roars, his frustration boiling over as the other goblins shrink back in terror. He takes a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. Calm down, he tells himself, rubbing his forehead as he weighs his options. Should I send a few goblins to look for him first? He looks at the shivering, clumsy creatures before him. With a goblin's judgment, they won't be able to avoid the webs, he reasons, knowing he can't risk more of them. The rain continues to lash against the roof of the cave, a relentless drumbeat in the oppressive silence. Water drips from the ceiling, the dampness seeping into everything as the storm rages on outside. Hyunmin stares out into the dark, wet forest. He couldn't have gone far, he says, more to himself than to the others. With a sharp, decisive movement, he grabs a crude wooden spear, his grip tightening on the rough shaft. My lord, the goblins cry out as he begins to walk back out into the torrential rain. I'll be right back. The rest of you stay inside, he commands, his voice hard and unwavering. That's an order. His polished shoes splash into the deep puddles, the cold water soaking into his socks as he steps back into the danger. He marches into the gloom of the spider woods, where anything could leap out at any moment. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared, he thinks. His knuckles are white where he grips the spear. It's just that, he muses, his thoughts drifting to the responsibilities of his new role, willingly taking risks in a crisis. His internal monologue continues, his gaze fixed on the shadows ahead. Is what I believe a leader should do. He stops suddenly, his eyes widening as he spots something in the mud. There, partially obscured by the falling rain, are a series of small, frantic footprints leading deeper into the woods. He follows the trail, his footsteps echoing in the wet grass. Did he go that way? He wonders, his anxiety growing with every step. A blinding flash of lightning tears through the sky, followed instantly by a deafening roar of thunder. Hyunmin flinches, his senses on high alert. Above the sound of the storm, a high-pitched, piercing scream echoes through the trees. K-Y-E-E-K. Hyunmin's head snaps toward the sound. What was that? He gasps, his eyes scanning the pitch-black woods. In the distance, a faint, flickering light appears. He breaks into a run, the mud splashing up his legs as he charges toward the light, spear at the ready. Large, dark feet pound against the wet ground, the predator closing in on its trapped prey. Surrounded by a ring of fire, Kimpro crouches on the ground, tears streaming down his face as he reaches out in terror. My lord, he cries as the flames dance in his terrified eyes. This little goblin child is hauling it through the mud, because his butt is literally on fire. Hyunmin is caught totally off guard when the screaming kid lunges straight for him. He catches the boy midair to figure out what the hell is going on. The kid won't stop yelling about his burning rear end, while Hyunmin struggles to hold him. He tells the little guy to just chill out and hold still for a second. Hyunmin dunks him face first into a puddle to put out the flames. The fire goes out with a sizzle, leaving the kid face down in the mud, totally drained. Hyunmin immediately starts laying into him for wandering off into the woods alone. The boy just breaks down, sobbing about his hungry little brother back at the cave. Turns out the younger one wouldn't stop crying because he wanted fruit and they were starving. Hyunmin's about to keep scolding him, but then a massive realization hits him. He stops. He's been in the demon realm for a while now, and he just noticed something huge. He realizes he hasn't seen a single scrap of fire since he arrived in this world. Without a second thought, he starts stripping off his expensive suit jacket. He literally starts tearing the high-end fabric apart with his teeth to make strips. He wraps the cloth tightly around the end of his spear to prep a makeshift torch. Meanwhile, the Red Rock Valley goblins are shivering in the dark, scared of getting yelled at. Suddenly, one of them catches a weird sound echoing through the trees. They're shaking in their boots, barely able to see 2 feet ahead in the pitch black. Every muddy step feels like they're walking straight into a trap. That's when they spot a flickering orange glow cutting through the gloom. A massive wall of fire suddenly erupts from the shadows, and the goblins absolutely lose it. They stand there frozen, eyes wide as the darkness is pushed back for the very first time. The flames roar, casting a heat and light they've never experienced before. Total shock washes over them. It's like they're witnessing a miracle. They drop to their knees in the mud, completely overwhelmed by the sight. To these goblins, this isn't just a torch. It's a divine wonder that shouldn't exist. The brilliant flame burns alone in the dark, a sight none of them will ever forget. Standing there holding the fire is Hyunmin, looking like a total legend. To his tribe, he doesn't look like a manager anymore. He looks like a god descending from the heavens. He stares back at them, perfectly calm despite the epic atmosphere. He just casually asks them what the hell they're doing out here in the middle of a storm. He reminds them he told them to wait, but then admits this actually works out for his plan. He pulls out a strand of the sticky spider silk he found earlier. The moment it touches the flame, it goes up like it's soaked in gasoline. The tribe is floored. Their biggest nightmare just became their most effective weapon. Hyunmin looks over at the little goblin and admits it was all thanks to his discovery. He decides the kid deserves more than just a thank you. He needs a proper name. He declares that from this moment on, the boy will be known as Kim Prometheus. He calls him Kimpro for short, since he's the one who finally brought fire to the tribe. A system notification pops up. He's officially bestowed a name for the very first time. The numbing effect kicks in immediately, and a massive pillar of light swallows Kimpro whole. The goblin child floats in a pillar of golden light, staring up in total disbelief as the energy of his new name washes over him. His small form starts to transform, glowing with a divine intensity that leaves everyone watching breathless. The light finally fades, and Hyunmin looks on in awe as the boy slowly descends back to the ground. Kimpro stands there looking completely different, his eyes filled with a new, sharp intelligence. He looks down at his own hands, still processing the sheer power that just surged through his tiny body. Hyunmin watches the kid intently, wondering exactly what kind of changes this evolution brought to his first-named subordinate. The rest of the tribe erupts into a fanatical frenzy, chanting Kimpro's name like he's their new messiah. Hyunmin's eyes sharpen as he watches the spectacle, his tactical mind already moving to the next phase. He raises his torch high and shouts for everyone to settle down, reminding them that the mission isn't over yet. He orders the tribe to gather around, promising to hand out a torch to every single one of them. With a dangerous glint in his eyes, Hyunmin declares that it's finally their turn to hunt. A spark hits the silk, and the forest begins to glow. Oh Hyunmin leads the group deeper into the rain-soaked forest. The tribe follows close behind, armed with torches and makeshift spears. Hyunmin comes to a sudden halt. They've reached the heart of the spider's territory. The trees are choked with thick layers of white silk. Hyunmin doesn't hesitate and starts burning the traps away. Kimpro flinches as the fire flares up right in front of him. Hyunmin realizes these cocoons belong to the scouts who were captured earlier. Above them, a massive predator starts to creep through the branches. He senses a pair of eyes watching from the dark. A giant spider drops from the canopy with a screech, catching the goblins off guard. He tightens his grip on the spear. Hyunmin swings the flame in a wide arc, meeting the beast head-on. The monster shrieks and recoils from the sudden heat. It's just as he thought. These things are cold-blooded and terrified of fire. Burning the whole forest would drive them out, but it would also destroy their only food supply. He spots more movement in the shadows. They're being surrounded. One spider shoots a thick stream of silk from its abdomen. The webs rain down on the group like a heavy net. Hyunmin clears the air with a swipe of his torch. The goblins are already panicking, cowering as the monsters close in. The tribe is completely overwhelmed by the ambush. Hyunmin grits his teeth. If he doesn't act now, the whole group will be slaughtered. He charges straight into the heart of the nest. A massive spider tries to pin him down with its legs. He dodges the silk and circles around, torch in hand. He aims his spear right at the beast's underside. The wooden stake sinks deep, and dark ichor sprays across the forest floor. Blood drips from the carcass as the predator goes limp. He stands over the fallen beast, the flame still burning bright. The goblins stare in disbelief. Their lord just killed a nightmare with his own hands. Hyunmin raises his torch and shouts that they can win this as long as they have fire. He orders them to stop being afraid and charge. The fear in the ranks finally turns into aggression. Even little Kimpro finds his courage and rushes forward. The rest of the tribe stops running and prepares to fight back. A wave of fire and spears hits the spider lines. One goblin skewers a spider while holding his torch high. They work together to pin the monsters down. The hunter becomes the hunted as another spider is taken down. Kimpro is having the time of his life on the front lines, taking down spiders left and right. He yells out to his lord, proud of the progress he's making in the heat of battle. With a grin on his face, he looks back to make sure Hyunmin is watching him. His eyes are bright, filled with the reflection of the fire and his own bravery. Meanwhile, Hyunmin is realizing that these spiders aren't just mindless bugs. They're actually coordinating their attacks, and it's starting to get messy. He tries to hold his ground, but the canopy is crawling with more than he can handle. Suddenly, he's yanked off his feet. He's been caught in a trap. Before he can react, he's dragged high into the dark canopy. The tribe watches in total shock as their leader is snatched away by the monsters. Panic sets in immediately. If the Lord is gone, the rest of them are doomed. Wrapped tight in a silk cocoon, Hyunmin can only think about the fate of his tribe. Without his leadership, there'll be nothing more than snacks for the spiders. The despair starts to set in as he looks down at his helpless subject. He knows the valley will fall into ruin if he doesn't find a way out of this. But Kimpro isn't giving up. He starts sprinting toward the trees with a torch in hand. He's sobbing as he runs, desperate to reach his lord before it's too late. The other goblins try to pull him back, shouting that it's too dangerous. A spider fires a stream of silk to stop him in his track. Kimpro doesn't even flinch, charging through the darkness. He keeps screaming that the lord can't die, his voice shaking but firm. It's a level of loyalty that no one expected from a small goblin. He flashes back to the moment Hyunmin first took his hand and gave him a name. That memory is the only thing driving him forward through the rain. Suddenly, a surge of power erupts from within his small body. The system confirms it. The passive effect of his nomming has finally been activated. A shroud of intense, protective fire flares up around him. He plants his feet, ready to launch himself into the sky. Engulfed in flames, Kimpro shoots into the air like a literal fireball. He screams out for his lord as he closes the distance to the cocoon. He makes a direct hit, his small frame slamming into the sticky silk. The heat is so intense that the webs immediately begin to melt and sizzle away. He clings to the structure, his flaming presence burning through everything. The thick webbing gives way as the supernatural fire does its work. Hyunmin stares in shock as the kid who was once a victim becomes his literal savior. Kimpro looks back at him with a wide, happy grin, thrilled to have reached him. It's a heroic rescue, until Hyunmin realizes he's actually being cooked alive by the heat. He has to ask Kimpro to move a bit before he turns into a human barbecue. The little guy sits down, trying to get his new powers under control. He concentrates hard on suppressing the magical blaze. The fire on his back slowly flickers out, leaving only faint embers. Human is finally back on solid ground, safe but definitely a bit singed. Oh, Hyunmin asks Kimpro if he can actually control those intense flames himself. Kimpro nods proudly, making Hyunmin realize just how powerful the numbing effect really is. He's amazed that despite being right in the middle of that blaze, he doesn't have a single burn on him. He stands up and scans the dark, wet forest, his heart still racing from the rescue. He looks up at the massive, sticky webs that had nearly been his tomb. The spiders seem to be gone, but the forest floor is still littered with their presence. Suddenly, he catches a glimpse of a movement in the shadows that stops him cold. His eyes widen as he senses a much larger threat lurking nearby. A massive spider with glowing yellow eyes looms over the clearing. It lets out a piercing, high-pitched screech that echoes through the trees. Hyunmin drops into a low crouch, gripping his spear and bracing for another fight. He shouts for the goblins to prepare for battle, but the monster hesitates. Instead of attacking, the giant spider turns and retreats into the thicket. He watches it vanish, wondering if they're actually giving up or just regrouping. The rain continues to fall, washing away some of the sticky silk from his clothes. Finally, he lets out a long, shaky sigh of relief as the immediate danger passes. He slumps down onto the mud, his body finally starting to feel the heavy weight of exhaustion. The other goblins look on in awe, realizing their lord has survived the ordeal. One of them grips his weapon tightly, his knuckles white with leftover tension. Suddenly, a cheer erupts. Their lord and Kimpro have successfully driven off the swarm. The fear turns into wild celebration as they dance and holler in the rain. They credit him with scaring off the massive leader spider all by himself. "The lord is the best," they shout, and Hyunmin can't help but feel they're getting a bit too enthusiastic. A sense of peace returns to the valley as the wind whistles through the treetops. Hyunmin picks up one of the strange, glowing fruits that fell during the commotion. He examines it closely, his mind already drifting back to the logistics of his new home. He remembers being told that farming was impossible here, but the rules seem to be different for him. A goblin comes running toward him, screaming for his attention at the top of his lungs. Hyunmin is lost in thought, imagining how these fruits could solve world hunger back home. Then a goblin rushed over, shouting to grab everyone's attention, and eagerly demanded that the lord look at something. The goblin was practically spitting with excitement as he prepared to deliver the news. Hyunmin snaps out of it and sees the poor guy is absolutely panting from exhaustion. The goblin is stammering, his eyes wide with a mix of terror and wonder. He finally chokes out the news. A strange beast has appeared in the forest. Hyunmin immediately tenses up, thinking the spiders might have returned for a second round. He follows the goblin to a pile of discarded spider cocoons on the forest floor. They peer inside one of the torn-open silk sacks to see what's hidden inside. It's a small, fluffy white wolf pup, shivering from the cold and the ordeal. The goblin explains that while everything else in the cocoons was dead, this one was still alive. Hyunmin commends him for bringing the news immediately, impressed by his initiative. He jokingly says he'll remember this for the goblin's next performance review. The goblin just stares back, having absolutely no idea what a performance review is. One of the starving goblins finally reaches his breaking point, his eyes bulging with desperation. He lunges through the air toward Kimpro, screaming his thanks for what he thinks is about to be a meal. Oh, Hyunmin yells at the top of his lungs for the crazed goblin to stop before he does something he'll regret. A sharp impact sound rings out as the goblin's reckless charge is suddenly cut short. Instead of a fellow tribe member, the hungry goblin finds his mouth stuffed full of a large, glowing fruit. Kimpro cheekily balances another fruit on the stunned goblin's head, while Hyunmin turns his focus to the pup. The small white wolf pup lets out a soft, pitiful whine from the depths of its silken cocoon. Hyunmin considers the strategic value. If it grows attached to them, it could be a powerful asset for the territory. However, he also imagines the darker possibility. A wild beast could easily grow up to be a lethal threat to his goblins. He stares down at the tiny, shivering creature, weighed down by the heavy responsibility of leadership. The pup struggles to its feet, its thin legs wobbling as it tries to move toward its rescuer. Hyunmin watches the little creature's effort, his own eyes reflecting a cold, analytical calculation. Suddenly, the pup's eyes glow with an intense golden light, revealing its true nature. Kimpro looks on with wide-eyed curiosity, sensing the change in the atmosphere. Hyunmin decides to take a chance, as he sat still and let the wolf pup leap straight onto him. Kimpro cries out in anxious alarm, "Lord!" panicking as the wild beast approaches his master. The pup immediately starts licking Hyunmin's face, its small tail wagging with newfound energy. Hyunmin calls out to his first loyal subordinate, a hint of warmth returning to his voice. He introduces the wolf to Kimpro, telling him to take good care of his new junior employee. Kimpro stares back in complete confusion, not quite grasping the corporate hierarchy being forced upon him. A status window appears, confirming the hearing of the unidentified wolf cub in the position of tribe mascot. Nearby, a massive pile of the strange orange fruits is being collected by the hardworking goblins. Hyunmin looks over the day's harvest, satisfied with the results of their dangerous mission. With a glowing forest full of food behind them, he knows the Red Rock Valley goblins won't go hungry for a long time. The goblins are hard at work, stripping the trees bare of every piece of fruit they can reach. They're absolutely hyped about it, laughing and cheering over the massive haul. Even the little wolf pup, Gibel, gets to feast while the tribe starts treating Hyunmin like a literal god. But while they're busy celebrating, Hyunmin is off on his own, looking serious with a lit torch in hand. He heads deeper into the dark woods, his dress shoes crunching against the forest floor. The goblins pause their work, watching their leader disappear into the trees with a confused look. Somewhere nearby, a pair of small feet are racing through the grass. It's Kimpro, and he's giggling to himself about the big bag of fruit he's managed to gather all on his own. He spots a bright glow through the trees and calls out to Hyunmin, eager to show off his hard work. The little guy is beaming, shouting that he's picked a whole bunch. His face is full of pure joy as he waits for his lord's approval. But his excitement dies instantly. A fruit drops from his bag as he sees the forest is being burned to the ground. Kimpro starts trembling, completely terrified as Hyunmin greets him, saying it's perfect timing. Standing before the massive wall of fire, Hyunmin casually asks the little guy if he's the one who could start a fire like this. Flames tear through the forest. Hyunmin watches the fire, knowing the spiders hide in these trees to ambush their prey. He decides a controlled burn is the only way to get rid of the threat for good. Creating a safe zone will let the tribe harvest fruit in peace, especially if he builds a watchtower. A voice calls out to the Lord from the shadows. Kimpro stops dead in his tracks, dropping his entire bag of fruit. Hyunmin turns around with a lit torch in his hand. He greets the little guy and asks him for a light. The fruit spills out everywhere on the ground. Kimpro starts bawling, terrified he's in trouble. He begs for mercy while Hyunmin just stands there, completely lost. The panic spreads fast. The other goblins start screaming and frantically piling up fruit to appease their leader. They all drop to the dirt, kowtowing in absolute terror. The elder goblin even offers her own head just to save the children. Hyunmin finally snaps and tells them to stop being idiots and just listen to him. He tries to explain it's all just a misunderstanding, while the forest burns behind him. Night falls and the chaos finally settles down. A single rotting fruit core sits abandoned on the dark soil. Hyunmin walks through the valley, his office shoes getting covered in dust. He heads back to camp with Kimpro and Gibel trailing behind him. Kimpro tries to save face, claiming he always believed in his lord. He keeps insisting he's telling the truth, though Gibel doesn't look convinced. The little goblin keeps up the act. Hyunmin looks at his food, deep in thought. The watchtower helped, but they're still in trouble. He does the math. They have 260 goblins to take care of now. At this rate, the entire area will be stripped bare in only 6 months. If the fruit doesn't grow back faster, the tribe is going to starve. He realizes a corporate-style restructuring of their territory is the only way to survive. He stares at the half-eaten fruit in his hand. He clenches his fist, determined to prevent a total collapse. A small campfire crackles in the middle of the night. Hyunmin sits by the flames, keeping watch while his subordinates sleep. He draws a crude map in the dirt, marking the canyons, hills, and the distant river. To keep going, they'll have to push into the uncharted desert. He knows the goblins are too small for close-quarters combat, so he needs to find them some long-range weapons. He reaches down to pet the white wolf pup resting in his lap. Something catches his eye on the pup's fur. He pulls a thin, sticky strand of spiderweb off of Gibel. He gives it a tug and notices it's surprisingly stretchy. He pulls it even further. The elasticity is incredible. He lets go to test the tension. The web snaps back and startles Gibel, who wakes up with a yelp. Hyunmin apologizes to the poor wolf pup, explaining he didn't mean to snap the web at him. Gibel just stares at the fire, still a bit shaken up. A strand of spiderweb popped out and lay scattered on the ground near the embers. Hyunmin leans in, noticing something strange about the way it's lying there. He jumps into action, careful not to let the whole strand burn up. He pulls it away from the heat just in time. He reaches out to touch the fiber with his bare fingers. To his surprise, the heat has completely removed the stickiness, leaving it smooth. He wonders why it's behaving like this. Then it hits him. He might have just stumbled onto a major technological breakthrough. He gathers more of the web and brings it closer to the fire. He carefully bundles it together. He watches the fibers react to the heat. He gives the bundle a strong tug, Just as he thought, it's still incredibly elastic. He realizes that if he dries the web near the fire without burning it, it keeps its spring but loses the glue. Kimpro walks up and asks what his lord is up to. Hyunmin shows off a length of the heat-treated string with a confident smirk. Kimpro and Giebel look up in total wonder. With a sharp snap of the string, Hyunmin declares the start of a new project. A few days later, the entire tribe gathers at the base of the throne. Hyunmin steps up to a large crate covered with a tarp. He tells the crowd that today is the day. He finally unveils their new survival plan. The goblins whisper amongst themselves, wondering what the Lord has in store for them. He whips off the cover, revealing a box filled with Y-shaped wooden frames. He calls Kimpro over and hands him a piece of fruit. He holds up a finished model, announcing that this is the weapon that will change everything. He spent the last few days mass-producing these crude but effective slingshots. The goblins are skeptical, wondering if they're supposed to eat the weird sticks. Rumors start flying that the Lord is making toys out of spider butts. Hyunmin loses his patience and bellows for silence, insisting these are serious weapons. He pulls one out of the crate and calls for Kimpro to step up. The little goblin tosses the fruit high into the air on command. The orange fruit arches over the heads of the crowd. Hyunmin takes aim, pulling the elastic band back as far as it can go. He focuses on the target, his eyes sharp and steady. He lets fly a small stone that streaks through the air. A loud crack echoes through the cavern as the fruit shatters into 100 pieces. The tribe goes wild, convinced that their lord just used some kind of powerful magic. Hyunmin shakes his head, clarifying that it wasn't magic at all. He explains it's just the power of the slingshot, a weapon that finally gives them a way to fight from a distance. He calls out to his people, his voice booming through the cave. He tells them to grab their new gear, because they're leaving this valley behind to find a land where they can actually thrive. The goblins look at each other with pure terror, terrified of the thought of facing more monsters in a strange land. One of them trembles, whispering about how scary the world outside their valley really is. Oh Hyunmin silences the crowd, demanding their full attention as he stands atop a rocky ledge. He reminds them of the dark days they just left behind, where starvation and child sacrifice were the only ways to survive. He asks them to look at their current state and realize they no longer have to live in that constant state of fear. When a goblin tries to credit him, Hyunmin immediately stops him, insisting that he didn't do it alone. He declares that every bit of progress they've made was a result of their collective effort. He raises his hand high, his presence commanding the entire cavern. He calls for volunteers, promising that this expedition is the key to ensuring no goblin ever starves again. With fire in his eyes, he shouts that this journey is for their safety and prosperity, and asks who will be brave enough to join him. He challenges them to stand by his side and become the heroes of their territory. The goblins are stunned, the weight of his words finally sinking in. Slowly, a few hands start to rise from the crowd. Then more follow until a sea of green hands fills the air. Hyunmin lets out a soft breath and smiles, genuinely touched by their display of loyalty. He stands tall with his hand raised, thanking them for standing with him. The cavern erupts in cheers as the tribe rallies behind their leader. This is Oh Hyunmin, the man who was once a star recruit and the youngest manager in a major human conglomerate. Back in the human world, no project was ever too difficult for him to handle. But this particular project, leading a goblin tribe through a desolate wasteland, is proving to be his greatest challenge yet. A long line of goblins stretches across the sandy dunes as they begin their long trek. Hyunmin is already drenched in sweat, lamenting his lack of gym time back in his old life. He quickly realizes that wouldn't have mattered anyway, since his 100-hour work weeks left him with no free time at all. The goblins aren't faring much better, their legs shaking under the weight of their heavy packs. Some of them can barely take another step, crying out that their bodies simply won't move anymore. Hyunmin yells back words of encouragement, promising they'll find a place to rest if they can just hold on a bit longer. He glances down at his constant companions, asking if they're holding up all right. Kimpro and Giebel are practically bursting with energy, seemingly unaffected by the harsh journey. Hyunmin can't help but feel a bit jealous that a small goblin and a pup are in better shape than he is. He looks over at Kimpro, who has been a loyal supporter since the very beginning. He takes a moment to collect his thoughts, scratching his face as he remembers something from before they left. He looks at Giebel, the little wolf pup who has become an indispensable part of their group. Before they departed on the expedition, Hyunmin had gathered some of his best workers for a special ritual. He pointed at the first goblin, formally bestowing upon him the name Fluffy. He then turned to the next one, declaring that his name would be Choco. Finally, he pointed to the third and dubbed him Cookie. He waited with bated breath, expecting some kind of magical transformation or power surge. But nothing happened, leading him to conclude that the numbing effect doesn't work in this world like it does in games. As they walk, Giebel howls excitedly, prompting Kimpro to wonder if the pup wants a name as well. Kimpro thinks the pup's name is already Junior, but Hyunmin quickly corrects him, insisting that's not a real name. Kimpro is genuinely confused, having assumed that was the pup's proper title. Hyunmin sighs, promising to explain the nuances of numbing later before turning his attention back to the pup. Oh Hyunmin reaches out and gently pats Giebel, the wolf pup letting out a playful howl as he enjoys the attention. Hyunmin ponders for a moment, trying to recall the name of the legendary world-devouring wolf from Norse mythology to give the pup a fitting title. He starts to whisper the name Fen, Fen, as he watches the pup's excited reaction. Suddenly, the pup rolls over onto his back, wiggling his paws in the air with pure, unadulterated joy. Giebel lets out a happy AWOO, with his tongue hanging out, looking as adorable as any pet could be. Hyunmin looks down at the goofy pup with a mixture of amusement and mild embarrassment. He accidentally lets the name slip out as a question, Giebel, while watching the pup play on the ground. A holographic window from Wiki suddenly chimes in, announcing that he has officially granted a name to a citizen. Hyunmin stares in horror as the status window displays the pup's permanent new name, Giebel. He desperately tries to correct the system, shouting that he wanted Fenrir, but Wiki coldly informs him that the name has already been locked in. Exhausted and defeated, Hyunmin apologizes to the pup, feeling guilty for giving him such a silly name instead of a legendary one. Resuming their trek across the dunes, Kimpro reaches up and grabs Hyunmin's finger to keep pace. The little goblin looks up at him with wide, curious eyes, asking exactly how much farther they need to travel. Hyunmin tells him they need to reach the river, though Kimpro can only manage a confused waivu. In response, Kimpro tilts his head, completely unfamiliar with the concept and wondering what a waivu even is. Hyunmin looks down with a gentle smile, explaining that it's a place where massive amounts of water flow across the land. He envisions a thriving ecosystem where water brings life, attracting fish and predators alike, creating a place where civilizations can finally take root. His expression hardens with determination as he realizes that where there is water, there must surely be other people. He feels the small, firm grip of Kimpro on his hand, a reminder of the people he is leading through this wasteland. Kimpro stares up at his lord, clearly awestruck by the depth of Hyunmin's knowledge and vision. Hyunmin stares off into the distance, lost in his own silent reflections as they march forward. He hopes that by finding other humans, he might finally discover a clue or a path that leads back to his own world. He holds on to the faint hope of returning home, the setting sun casting long shadows behind the group. His private thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a goblin scout calling out to him from the distance. The goblins suddenly freak out, pointing toward the horizon. There's a massive silhouette standing right in front of the sun. Hyunmin's heart drops. He wasn't expecting a welcoming committee this big. The giant bull beast snarls, its teeth grinding together. It's an absolute unit of a bull, eyes glowing red and steam venting from its nose. Kimpro and the rest of the tribe are literally shaking in their boots. Hyunmin swallows hard, his mind racing to find a way out of this. The beast lets out a deafening roar and starts its charge. It's closing the distance fast, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. Hyunmin realizes they can't outrun something that fast. They have to fight. He starts barking orders, telling the slingshot unit to load and the spears to hold their ground. He grabs a handful of red fruit from his supply bag. He smashes them over his head, drenching his white shirt in red juice. He's turning himself into a giant red target to lure the bull away from his units. The bull sees red and locks onto Hyunmin with a murderous glare. It charges full speed toward him. Hyunmin stands his ground, baiting it in. He screams for the slingshot unit to aim directly for the eyes. The goblins pull back on their new spider silk slingshots. A massive volley of stones flies through the air all at once. The stones connect, pelting the beast's face with a barrage of impacts. Blood splatters as the projectiles hit their mark over and over. The bull gets hit right in the eyes, blinding it mid-charge. The beast screams in agony, its head thrashing around. Hyunmin smirks as the first phase of the plan actually works. The monster's face is a mess, but it's still moving on pure momentum. It's coming right at him like a runaway train. Hyunmin grits his teeth and braces himself as the beast closes the last few feet. He gives the signal. It's time for the spear unit to strike. The goblins thrust their spears forward from behind their lord. Dozens of sharpened points meet the charging beast head-on. The bull runs straight into the forest of spears, impaling itself. Blood sprays across Hyunmin's face as the monster finally goes down. As the dust settles, a mysterious light begins to glow behind the fallen beast.